Public access to tonight's meeting is also available on the Local Government Access Channel 8 for Comcast subscribers, on the city's YouTube channel online, and by telephone using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Leidy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Luke Manhiro-Massa.
Here.
Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Here.
Councilmember Kondo.
Here.
Councilmember Roper.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you. We have one item on the agenda tonight. We have a DRCOG Regional Housing Needs Assessment. So I'd like to welcome our Director of Planning and Development, Brooks Svoboda, to present this item. Good evening.
Remember to turn this on this time.
Nice.
So before I go through the presentation, I'm going to kind of briefly touch on why we're doing this tonight. And it's somewhat explained through the presentation and the staff memo, but effectively the housing study that we did a couple of years back does not satisfy the current legislation. And so by presenting this presentation to council tonight, we would otherwise satisfy the state requirement for compliance by presenting it to you and having you effectively acknowledge that you had this presentation. This does not affect us in any big, larger scale way, which we'll talk through during the presentation, but I just wanted to make everybody aware of what the intent of this information share is tonight, is that we are here really to satisfy a state legislative requirement that if we did not do this, would result in us having to retain a consultant ourselves to do the work that's missing. So with that, I'll get going unless there's any questions on that.
There's no question.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So as I said, here we're proud of a pathway for compliance to Senate Bill 24-174 by utilizing DRCOG's Regional Housing Needs Assessment. Senate Bill 174 passed in May 24, requires local governments to conduct a housing needs assessment that conforms to DOLA methodologies by December 2026. We did complete a housing study in 23, but DOLA determined that we did not satisfy all the requirements. Local governments are exempt from doing their own study if they participate in the Regional Housing Needs Assessment that complies with DOLA methodologies, is which we are presenting to you tonight. Housing Needs Assessment, initiated by the DRCOG Board of Directors in 23, it provides a shared data-driven foundation to understand how much housing needs are in the region, and provides a scale and scope of housing needs so strategies can be developed that match the reality on the ground. In December 24, DRCOG submitted their study to DOLA. In 25, DOLA gave it conditional approval. In April 25, DRCOG completed all the necessary changes for substantial conformity, which is why we're here tonight, because there is a 60-day review period, and that's what we're here to do tonight, is to provide that information to the City Council for their review and consideration, so that then subsequent to this presentation night, we will be bringing this back to you at the next council meeting as a consent agenda, just acknowledging that you received it and provided feedback. So we have until the September 12th to do that. We're ahead of the curve. And then if we don't do this, then if we do not accept this study, then we would have to do our own and have to have that done by December 2026. Some of the key findings of the study is that it's been hard to keep pace. Low income households below 50% area median income represent the greatest need for additional housing. We'll show you a graphic here in a minute. Aging population and smaller household trends require more diverse housing types. Housing types and affordability are unevenly distributed throughout the region. So as of right now, by 2032, we need to provide 223,000 homes and 500,000 units by 2050. That's the identified need. Right now, there's 69,000 units that are becoming available. There's an additional need of 154 by 2032. This is the graphic I was talking about. The areas that are in the clear of these columns here is the representative missing components of housing throughout the region. This looks at from 0 to 50% income of area median income all the way up to 120+%. And so you can kind of see graphically there where the missing components are. This is sort of a generalized formulaic process in which how this study is conducted and the basis for data that is analyzed. It provides a scale and scope of needs so we can develop strategies that match the reality on the ground. The precise number isn't necessarily important. Understanding the scale and scope of housing needs and developing a strategy proportionate to those needs is really what the focus of this is, and I'll touch on that in just a few minutes here. So Northglenn is actually straddled between the north central and the north sub areas of the study. And so with that, you can see that there's about 70,000 housing needs. And one thing I did want to point out is that isn't included in this study and our 2023 study is that since the 2023 study, we're effectively going to be adding almost 1,400 residential units. So we have everything from 738 market rate units. We have 164 low-income restricted units, and then we have 172 senior market rate housing market rate units, and then we have 196 townhomes and 86 detached single-family residences that are not accounted for within this table here. So just to give you an idea of this area, if you go to the very bottom of the report in the 200-page zone of the documents that we provided, you'll see where Northglenn kind of sits between the two regions. And so just to give some context, we are already contributing to this number through the recent efforts that we've done through all the housing development projects that we have recently completed. So here, the one substantial thing I wanted to point out is that North Central and North, this talks about the housing burden. In 2022, it's at 52.8 and 52.6 respectively for the two areas. For us, in our 23 study, all households is about 34% income burdened. So we're actually at a lower stress level than what our two areas that we are part of in the regional study. The other thing I wanted to mention is that our renter household burden income is very close to these numbers. It's actually at 53.8%. Owner occupied is at 20.07%. So just to give some context, we are, as an aggregate, below the demand of what we're seeing at this scale that is being identified. And as we talked about in our 23 study, a lot has to do with the fact that we really are the North Metro area sort of accessible housing stock that really we serve a larger area. So here are some frequently asked questions. What's the benefit? If we participate, we avoid having to do our own assessment. This does not affect how we do our previous study or how we do potential future studies. It really is satisfying a state legislative requirement. With that, if we do respond within the next 60 days, this will avoid us to have to do our own assessment. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
I don't see any hands just yet. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, I sit on the DRCOG board and I represent the city. I will tell you that this work has been about 2+ years. In fact, it preceded 2 legislation session cycles prior, and not to toot the DRCOG horn, but I will say that it is very comprehensive in the assessment covering the Denver metro area. Again, that's 59 municipalities and counties. And I would encourage you, if you would like to see more, especially the interactive website. I'm not going to send the link by email because I think I got my hand slapped last time. But feel free to Google DRCOG housing assessment, and you can go to this page and actually drill down. I think Councilmember Jaramillo, you would really like this because I know you like to do that on Google Maps. But this is a great opportunity for you to go and see exactly how this all lays out in an interactive way. So again, I think this is really beneficial for all the communities, all the members of DRCOG, because they don't have to recreate the wheel from scratch. So I definitely would encourage us to adopt this assessment when we do vote on this later on in an official session.
Thank you. Councilmember Nowicki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Svoboda, for being here. So there really seems to be kind of two things here. Number one is kind of adopting whether or not we want to adopt this kind of methodology. And number two, diving into this housing assessment. Am I missing the mark?
I don't think we need to adopt this methodology. All we're doing is recognizing that DRCOG did this study,
Right.
and that we are going to then, in doing so, by recognizing the study, we will then be able to submit to DOLA that we are in compliance with Senate Bill 174.
Okay.
So this won't change how we do methodology. It's a support tool, but it's not necessarily dictatorial that we would have to utilize it, and no other methodology.
Okay. So going forward then, so we'll table that. I think it's a good idea to kind of piggyback on this work. I think it's really good work. Going forward, when we talk about housing then, are we going to take this and then sprinkle on some of our housing stuff and kind of do that?
The 23 study that we did is actually a little bit more drilled down and more detailed than this, because we looked at Northglenn specific and we compared it to the North Metro service area, which is slightly different area bubbles and whatnot. But primarily what we have is, I think we have a really good data set between the two.
Okay.
That as we move forward looking at Northglenn specific as well as the North Metro region, I think we have a good platform for having a constructive conversation. I sat in on a director cohort with DRCOG about the housing needs study a few weeks ago. And interestingly enough, I think where DRCOG wants to take this conversation with the state legislature is to basically say, look, you can't have the individual communities come up with their own housing ratios. If you can look at it from a more holistic approach, some of that housing need may already be met. It's a matter of, is it proximal and does it make sense to look at it and through that filter? So I think there's a bigger conversation to come. And I think this study here is really the foundation for that. And hopefully it will lead to potentially better policy making at the higher levels of government.
Okay. Because we've kind of dipped our toes into discussions around housing. And I think looking at this report and kind of taking a deep dive, there is a need for kind of lower income housing, and what does that look like in Northglenn?
So if I may, I think one of the things that if you look at our AMI, our low to moderate income, and where we sit within the North Metro region, we already provide for the North Metro region that accessibility. Our median household income is about 15% below the North Metro region already. So when you think about where our 100% AMI is versus the North Metro region AMI, we have about a 25% gap in multifamily rental rates. So when we did the 23 study, our aggregate average was around $1,300 for a multifamily unit, and the average for the North Metro was north of almost $1,600 for the same unit. So when we think about that, it's like our affordable housing would be even
Right,
more affordable.
which I appreciate, and I feel like we've kind of relied on that answer for the last 2 years.
Sure.
Without kind of doing anything different, kind of saying, well, Northglenn's affordable, so I just want to, again, this is a lot of information. I think it's good information. I do encourage everyone to take a look. I'm going to take a look at the website and have this kind of guide our discussion along with our previous housing needs assessment, so we can truly kind of get to what it is the future of Northglenn needs. And I'm, I have my own biases. My bias before was that, any kind of, it's the supply and demand. If we can get more supply, it will drive the cost down. But maybe I even need to look at that kind of bias a bit. So I'm, just kind of putting that out for everyone.
Sure.
You know,
I think one of the interesting things that happened when we were doing the Civic Campus project with Continuum Partners, just to kind of to your point, when we did the initial study for the Civic Campus, the rent rates in the North Metro area, including Northglenn, was around $2.33 a square foot for multifamily. By the time that study was done, and when we were working with Continuum, we had dropped below $2 a square foot. And so the market had added more units in the time that we did the study to the time that we were working with Continuum Partners. And I think right now with the 23 study, it's showing that we're even below $2 a square foot. So I think the market in the bigger service area is actually starting to provide more availability of housing. And so I think my takeaway from our housing study, to kind of fill in what your point you were making, council member, is do we have enough different types of housing? Because we have our study identified a large missing middle. And the missing middle is really like, Northglenn from a regional standpoint is really like first-time home buyer property and below AMI rental. So the question is what can we do differently to help vertically integrate that?
right. Where would you kind of put that, like that person in that kind of rent burden category?
So I would probably say from a North Metro regional standpoint, it'd be probably closer to $220 a square foot, is probably what we're talking about, $2 to $220 a square foot, as opposed to $1.80, $1.60, which is really where most of our properties are sitting right now.
Okay.
And Alexan is going to be coming in at probably those higher rent rates. Arden is going to be closer to the $2 to $220 a square foot, and Alexan will be closer to $225.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Svoboda, for bringing this to us. This information I got at CML, because DRCOG did a presentation on this very thing. But one of the things I remember, the controversy and the debates about this bill when it was being passed last year, or when it got passed last year. But I don't remember, is there any kind of a requirement or obligation to use the findings in a certain way, or?
No.
Okay, so it's just so that the public and whatever the policymakers have better information. Okay, that's great. And then I do want to say, I think we should go ahead and use this. And I really do like the fact that we're getting the regional picture, because kind of like the conversation that you just had with Councilmember Nowicki. I don't want Northglenn to end up being the place for all the low-income housing. Because one way of saying that we have more housing that's less burdensome for our residents is that we have a lot more low-income housing than our neighbors, and I don't want that trend to just continue. I think everybody should be making an effort to providing affordable housing. And then, like you were saying, and I have said before, I think the middle-income housing will be beneficial to everyone, even people looking for more affordable housing, because then people will be moving into whatever their next level of housing is, and then that frees up housing down the line. So, and then, so I guess that really answered my question, one question I had in this discussion, and so that wasn't a question, but thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Councilmember Nowicki, I'm more than happy to get with you offline to kind of walk you through the interactive website. While we were talking here, I was looking at the mix of dwelling types, say, for example, for Adams County at large, and then by comparison, let's say Brighton, Commerce City, and Thornton. So when you look at detached single-family home, unfortunately, I don't think I have the ability to share my screen, but Northglenn is just a smidge over. I'm eyeballing it because I don't have fine markings on the x-axis, probably around 60, 63%, somewhere in there. And of all the three cities, it's the lowest. It has actually, again, eyeballing it, probably the larger mix of attached townhome, row house. And same goes for 2 to 9 small multifamily. So I think the data hopefully doesn't lie. It gives you a truthful and accurate picture. The area where perhaps maybe Northglenn is not beating other adjacent cities is the percentage mix of mobile homes. So again, I'm more than happy to show you this so you can kind of get a sense of how this is all shaking out relative to our adjacent cities in Adams County. And for that matter, you can compare this against any other city or county within the DRCOG region. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Condo, for that, clarity. However, I am just thinking about all this and sort of processing, and, we're talking about our surrounding cities, but we aren't like them from a land size. So I wonder if, I would be much more interested in comparing cities that are similar in land mass and population to us versus just people, just those cities around us. They're not people, but whatever. The other municipalities, because I think we've run into this quite a bit when we do these types of things and comparing ourselves to our neighbors when we are not like them at all. We're landlocked, we're all these other things. And so when I think it comes to housing, we really need to consider that, we don't have space for mobile homes, right? We don't have that sort of thing. So I think that's not comparing apples to apples that much. I guess, I don't know, I think this obviously just brings up a lot of feelings that are unrelated to this topic or what we're discussing here. I think, I agree with Council Member Goff, Dr. Goff, about, we shouldn't carry the majority of the burden of affordable housing, but it needs to go some, what is the alternative is then people living in our parks. I don't know, what do we want? So I think that's a question we have to ask as well. I think I'm fine with this DRCOG assessment and going forward with that, but I do think housing sheds a light on a lot of rippling effects that also impact the city that we're sort of talking around in this conversation. That's all I'm thinking about.
Councilmember Nowicki, you had your hand up and it went back down. Do you have? You're good? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so it is my understanding that this will be coming forward in a consent agenda, saying that we had this presentation and we're admitting so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Council.
All right, I am going to adjourn the study session. I will now call to order the special city council meeting of July 21st, 2025. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Leidy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukman Hiramasa. Here. Councilmember Burns.
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo.
Here.
Councilmember Condo.
Here.
Councilmember Roper.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Nowicki.
Here.
Councilmember Walker.
Here.
I will entertain a motion that the city council meet in executive session pursuant to sections 4.5D of the City of Northglenn Home Rule Charter for legal consultation and advice, and 4.5G for negotiations regarding potential redevelopment of Washington Point.
Motion is so stated.
Seconded.
Is there any discussion? Don't forget to log in, because I did. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote and the motion to meet in executive session.
We will adjourn to the executive session.